Morning, Dan and Amy. So, after that horrific bombing in Kabul yesterday, 90 dead, 400 injured,
And it was right near the German embassy there.
is it time to take stock of our strategic approach to Afghanistan, even as General Mattis described the annihilation strategy that's being pursued against ISIS? Seems as the Taliban is making progress in Afghanistan. We've spent nearly $1 billion on the war in Afghanistan, liable for trillions more in veterans' health care costs for decades to come. 2,000 American soldiers have died there, more than 20,000 wounded in action. Is it going well? It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be that Afghanistan is failing, and Charlie Wilson's war notwithstanding, rebuilding it doesn't seem to be the order of the day either. Eric Prince has an interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal calling for the MacArthur model for Afghanistan. Eric Prince, of course, former Navy SEAL, rose to prominence as the head of Blackwater, which is a private military corp. Some controversy, of course, but regardless of his analysis, he suggests that the U.S. should consolidate authority in Afghanistan under one person, an American viceroy of sort, who would lead all U.S. government and coalition efforts. And it goes on from there once you've identified the MacArthur figure, if you will. For more on this, as well as the subpoenas that were issued yesterday from the House Intelligence Committee and other such matters of strategic significance, we're pleased to be joined by Ralph Peters, Colonel Ralph Peters, former Army officer and a strategic analyst for Fox News Channel. Colonel Peters, thanks for joining us again. What do you think of the suggestion that Mr. Prince made on the pages of the Journal?
I think Eric Prince is a scoundrel, always has been. And he would love us to stay in Afghanistan forever because he can make a lot of money off it. So I disregard anything Eric Prince says. Blackwater did more damage in Iraq than any other organization but Al-Qaeda back in the day. They were absolutely ruthless cowboys who just killed people and made our military's job, our mission, much, much tougher.
Oh, okay.
So I'll just write off Eric Prince. Now, Afghanistan itself, we never ask ourselves the fundamental questions, and we're still not asking them today. What is Afghanistan worth to us strategically? The answer is not much, if anything. Now, the argument that I still hear, and I heard back in 2002 and 2003, when some of us argued that, hey, you can't turn Afghanistan into Colorado. Nation building isn't going to work here. And the answer was that, well, if we don't do something, if we don't stay, we'll have to go back. Well, think how much cheaper it would have been in blood and treasure if we'd left Afghanistan in 2002 and then had to go back in 8 or 10 years and whack them again. The fundamental problem is that the Afghan people don't want what we want them to want. Now, there are some Afghans who are thrilled that we're there. They're the ones in the government who are stealing billions of dollars, buying mansions in Dubai or in Qatar or elsewhere in the Persian Gulf. Corruption, we've never really called them on it. We've made them half-hearted efforts. Corruption has utterly poisoned our efforts in Afghanistan.
Well, so what should we do? What do you call it? A full withdrawal? What should we do?
Well, there are two alternatives. One is to maintain the limited presence we have now to keep whacking terrorists when we can whack them. You can make an argument for that. The other option is to withdraw. Now, I said there were some things that are painful for us to see, but are simply true. And when I talk to retired generals who are emotionally invested in this, I'll say, look, how has the Taliban not only survived, but resurged? The Taliban now control at least 40% of the countryside. Now, how is that possible? 16 years of American efforts. At one point, we had well over 100,000 troops there fighting the Taliban. The Taliban don't have vast sums of money. They're not getting sophisticated military equipment. They get some support from Pakistan. But how have they survived? And the answer is this. Not for us, certainly, but for members of the Pashtun majority that lives in both sides of the Pakistani-Afghan border. For the Pashtuns, for many Pashtuns, not all, the Taliban are nationalist fighters. They're fighting for a Pashtunistan, for a Pashtun state. And, to these people who support the Taliban, we're the redcoats. We're the bad guys. They don't want what we want. Now, what they want, this is some that's just crazy. It's ethnically based. They want a primitive form of religion. But we can't make them want what we want them to want. And so, again, you'll have the retired generals always say, oh, the Afghans hate the Taliban. Well, then how on earth if the Afghans hate them so much, how does the Taliban survive? Why do young Afghans, Pashtuns, continue to join the Taliban instead of joining the Afghan National Army that we back?
But according to the BBC, the Taliban have denied carrying out this attack, which was not. I mean, well, no, it was in the diplomatic zone. It was in the green zone, supposedly a safe place, and they used a water tanker truck to blow up and kill so many people, 11 which are Americans.
Well, Amy, that's a very important point. The Taliban are fighting currently. They've changed their tactics quite a bit. They're currently waging a battle for hearts and minds, just as we are. I'm convinced the Taliban had nothing to do with that attack yesterday, because they do respect Ramadan, which has recently begun, the Muslim holy month, and they don't kill Afghan civilians if they can avoid it, unless they're collaborators, etc. This had all the hallmarks. It could have been Al-Qaeda, but it has the hallmarks of Islamic State, the ISIS subsidiary in Afghanistan's Islamic State in Khorasan, which is an old regional name for that part of the world.
Yeah, but ultimately, look, from our strategic perspective, it doesn't really matter. All that does is further complicate the situation. So to your point, Colonel Peters, you've got the Taliban controlling 40% of the country, and then you've got an ISIS problem as well. And unless we can somehow, pit one against the other and have one knock out the other while we knock out the one, then, as you say, we're playing whack-a-mole, and I guess we could do that every decade or so as needed when our substantial security interests are threatened.
Well, my argument is very simple. When you have a foreign threat, such as we saw from Al-Qaeda, who were being hosted by the Taliban in 2001, when you have a foreign threat of that nature, you go and you kill them and you come home. You're not obliged to rebuild your enemy's country for you. I mean, Afghanistan is not Germany in 1945, and by the way, we didn't rebuild it. The Germans had rebuilt it. But again, this is, what do we want? What do we expect? What is the desired end state? What is it about Afghanistan that makes it worth more American lives?
Right.
And again, I go back to this. If the Afghan people will not fight for the Kabul government, why on earth should we fight for it?
Let's go back to our government and the report out of CNN yesterday that Jim Comey may testify before Senate Intel as early as next week and may recast how he recalls conversations he had with President Trump about the investigation into General Flynn specifically. What credibility at this juncture after the last year do you assign to Jim Comey's forthcoming testimony?
I believe Jim Comey. I do not believe President Trump. I take a very different stance than many of my colleagues at Fox News.
Well, you believe. Wait, just you believe Jim Comey when he says what? Because he's saying things that are mutually exclusive, and he's on a range of topics.
No, I don't think he is saying things that are mutually exclusive. I think Jim Comey does his best. It's a difficult job. The FBI is above politics. And look, I'm sorry, but the Russian story is real. When you have so many illicit contacts with the Russians, when you have so many members of Trump's campaign and administration incriminated by contacts with the Russians, when you have a president who will not criticize Vladimir Putin ever, even though and then attack our closest allies, there is a story there. Sorry, folks.
But
there's no evidence of anything.
But Donald Trump has to answer for what his people do, and the Russia connection needs to be investigated.
Fine.
And I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an American patriot, and I don't want Russia calling the shots in the White House.
Well, that's fine, and I agree with you, and I finally investigated, and this is not like love Trump or anything like that, that he's beyond reproach. Nobody's beyond reproach. But my question is, one, Comey has testified before Congress saying no one has tried to interfere with our investigation. His acting director, former deputy director of FBI, said no one has tried to interfere with our investigation. Now, if the CNN report is accurate, Comey is going to testify that Trump did try and interfere with our investigation. Those two things would be mutually exclusive.
No, because you look at the dates when he said those things.
May 3rd.
He changed his story then. I mean,
he said May 3rd. He said that May 3rd. Now he's talking about a conversation that happened in December.
Yes, well, but December is after May 3rd.
No. May 3rd. May 3rd of this year. May 3rd of this year before Congress.
Let's just see what Comey says before Congress, because we're not perfect individuals. Human beings make mistakes. We're not all perfect masters of the English language. Our president isn't. And you asked me a question. I gave you my own.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to plumb the depths.
Trump administration.
And what about the nature, though, of at some point, given the leaks in the intelligence community, given everything that continues to come out, and oh, by the way, we also have subpoenas going after the unmaskers, right? The subpoenas issued with respect to Rice, Brennan, and Power, and that's an important part of the investigation as well, at least on the House side. But at some point, doesn't evidence have to be presented? Doesn't a statute have to be pointed to that says you are alleged to have violated this law?
The FBI doesn't shoot from the hip. I've worked with them. Those guys are methodical. Sometimes the investigations take years. This is incredibly complex. Right now, the FBI will be working with Treasury, and Treasury is the real ringer in this fight, to investigate. They follow the money. I mean, that's how you got Al Capone. That's how they'll get Mike Flynn, Paul Manafort, and other guys like that if they get them. But you don't want to rush to judgment. You want let Robert Mueller do his job. Let the investigation go forward. As for leaks, as a former intelligence officer, I deplore leaks. But I'll make 2 points. One, without misdeeds, there is nothing to leak. The second point is that during the Obama years, Republicans loved leaks about Hillary Clinton. Now suddenly the leaks are about Donald Trump, and Republicans don't like leaks anymore. That's hypocrisy. I just say, let the FBI, let the special counsel, Robert Mueller, do the investigation, and let's see where it goes. And don't rush it, because the FBI, as they build cases, they drain out every last dot of evidence. What the FBI would never want to do, and what the special counsel would not want to do, is, as the Bowery Boys used to say, jump to conclusions. You take your time, you get it right. We want this right. If the president is perfectly innocent, the investigation will show that. If there are real problems with the Russians, the investigations will show that.
All right.
We need to be patient and not be prisoners of the 24-hour, 24/7 news cycle.
All right. He is retired Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, strategic analyst for Fox News. Colonel Peters, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And he joined us on our turnkey Doubt Pro answer line.